the calling card of the left when a black man gets killed by a cop. The whole system is guilty. Burn the system down, but not the $5 trillion in untraceable payments. You are living in the most dangerous time in American history.
We won't take a single back step.
Former professional basketball player is now the Republican Party's choice.
Can you imagine Royce White, the U.S. Senator?
White won the endorsement on May 18th with 67% of the vote.
There's nothing that guarantees we win, but I guarantee you if we lose, we will die. Welcome back to another episode of Please Call Me Crazy, brought to you by Free People Radio, powered by our favorite sponsor, TireGet.com. That's TireGet.com. You have to buy tires from somebody. You might as well buy them from us. I've been saying that for a year and some change now. You better start buying some tires from us. You help support the movement, help fund the movement. We believe in the freedom of movement, and I guarantee you that's exactly what the establishment wants to take from you now. I'm your host, Royce White, here in the belly of the beast, Minneapolis, Minnesota. Today is Wednesday, February 26th, year of our Lord, 2025. And we have a special episode 250 this evening. Big 250. We're just getting started. So we appreciate everybody who's been with us for a long time. As long as you've been with us in the audience, make sure that you like and subscribe to the channel. Make sure that you leave comments. Comments, I believe, help the algorithm. Make sure that you leave comments, even everybody who's in the live chat, and we appreciate everybody who's in the live chat. Again, we're going to be starting a Sunday call-in show very soon, and we hope that some of you people who are consistently in the live chat will join us for the live audience on Sundays as regulars who ask questions. You'll be able to ask me questions on the regular every Sunday, and we're going to create it so the live chat regulars have some priority in terms of being in the queue for the live call-in show on Sunday evening. So we appreciate everybody who's been with us this long. We know that the podcast has a big audience, whether you watch on YouTube or Rumble or you're watching on Getter or you're watching on X. It's kind of all over the place, but we know that there's a big audience from the feedback that I get on social media and email and through the campaign. So we appreciate you being with us. Today we got another reaction episode. We got Tanner in the studio with us again. Tanner, thanks for being here again.
Of course.
We got a lot of videos queued up. Not going to spend as much time on each video, but I do want to say on the front end of today's reaction show, hopefully you got a chance to watch the Royce White show on Real America's Voice this past Saturday. And if you didn't, you can go to the Real America's Voice app, download the app. You can watch all of the shows for free. You can watch the live programming for free. If you don't have Real America's Voice, the app, I'm not sure what you're doing. It's completely free. And, my show is one of many great shows on it, including War Room with the great Steve Bannon. So download the Real America's Voice app. My show is 9 a.m. Eastern, Saturday mornings. We're working on getting to a daily show here in this calendar year. So, but last week I went on a bit of a rant. This Monday, on Monday, you saw a replay of an interview that I did last week with Action for Liberty. And I went on a couple of rants during that interview as well. And people got to understand the gloves are off this time. Donald Trump's victory was a miracle. First of all, him living was a miracle. Him winning was a miracle. And all the work that he's doing right now is miraculous by American history and world history standards because of where we had let our country and the society get to. Not only here, but around the world. And America plays a huge role in that, obviously. But we are living in miraculous times. But make no mistake about it, we have to cherish these moments. We have to dig deep. We have to find a way to be something that we obviously haven't been in the past, or else Donald Trump wouldn't have seemed like such an anomaly to us politically. I mean, the reason why Donald Trump won, or big reason why Donald Trump won is our political culture had shifted and become so stagnant in a certain direction that even Donald Trump's very common sense and logical rhetoric seemed like a huge departure from the norm. And that, by all metrics and standards, that is a huge indictment on us as the American people. So when we say we the people, we got to take the good with the bad. Yeah, we have a lot of rights and we have a lot of American pride and national spirit and sense of American identity. Some of us do. But we also got to accept the fact and acknowledge and take responsibility for where this country got to. And part of that is exactly what Professor Penn, if you're not watching the Professor Penn podcast, you should definitely go and subscribe to that. It's Tuesdays and Thursdays, 7:30 p.m. Central. And this weekend coming up, Professor Penn is running for chair of his Senate district, which is Senate District 45, right here in the belly of the beast, West Metro suburbs. Kind of that YZ, I think it goes all the way down to, I want to say maybe Waconia. Anyway, Senate District 45, there's a bunch of Senate districts in the state, and Professor Penn's running for the chair of his district, as he should, getting involved in the process, getting involved in the precinct, Minnesota Republican Party officer, BPOU Senate District process, because it carries a lot of weight. Those people who are the chairs or in charge of their Senate districts are the ones who are going to coordinate and sort of organize the perennial sort of hierarchy of their respective local Republican Party apparatus to gear up for elections and rules and just, how the party operates on a daily basis. So good luck to Professor Penn on Saturday. I hope to be there in person and see how the whole thing goes down. But he's been talking about the problems in the Republican Party for every day. I mean, I'm sure on every episode, Professor Penn is hammering down on the problems in the party. I more talk about the national and international, not because I'm not, interested in what's going on locally. It's just I've never been allowed to be in the party, actually. I mean, that's the truth. I tried to join the party on a number of occasions, and I was kind of stonewalled, which tells you a bit about what the problem is with the party. If people like me who are willing to sacrifice my life and time and energy to be involved in politics and to give what I think are genuine and novel ideas, and I'm being stonewalled, you kind of get a sense of how the party functions. And, I went to, I was at the Carver County Republican Convention. And in these early conventions now, 2 years out, you got the entire BPOU system getting somewhat organized. They're selecting delegates. They're selecting, individual precinct chairs and things of that nature. And, Professor Penn is in a different district, but I was at the Carver County, which is one of the bigger counties in the state. It's CD6, and it's Tom Emmer's County, and Jim Nash, who is I think he was one of the minority leaders there in the state house, or maybe it was the state senate. I forget which one, but and Julia Coleman was there, and then obviously that's Norm's daughter-in-law, and it's just, without saying it, I mean, there's no other way to say it. These people are fraudulent, and what's scary is they're so entrenched in the party because of their familiarity, because of their tenure, because of their understanding of how the machine works. They're so entrenched in the party that you come into a convention like I was at Carver County, and Patty Williamson is running it, and she gave great contribution to my last campaign, and she helped and she door knocked, and I like Patty a lot. And another Darren Rochelle was another guy who was kind of helping run the convention. And Senator Mark Horan, who is okay, he's okay. I heard he was making gestures behind me while I was talking. Some of that's a bit of fun. Some of it I take as disrespect because, to be quite honest, I've never really sat anywhere and heard Mark Horan say anything that challenged the status quo like I do. But we'll talk about that at another point in time. But anyway, I watch all these people, these regular citizens come into these BPOU meetings or, these Republican Party meetings, and I see how unempowered they feel by the face of the machine. And I'm not talking about these individuals specifically, although I am, right? I do think that Julia Coleman and Jim Nash represent the face of the machine, and I'll talk more about that in a moment. But I just mean, in general, because I've been to them all across the state, and I can see how, you come in as an individual citizen and maybe you know some people, maybe you don't, but you're trying to get involved in the process, and you got people who have been running the process telling you how to get involved in the process. Maybe they're not telling you everything on purpose. Maybe they're not telling you everything because they just aren't good organizers or communicators, and people start to be discouraged. Even there in CD6, I think there was probably less people than they anticipated to be involved in that convention, and we see a similar thing across the Republican Party. Even at the state convention last year when I won the endorsement, there was a low attendance. Partly was the cost that they charged to come to the convention, and part of it was people just being frustrated with the party and not having a lot of faith or belief in it, and basically saying, hey, listen, I don't have to be involved in the convention. I'm gonna cast my vote for who I want. Bottom line, I'm gonna be a Republican. I'm gonna vote Republican. I'm gonna vote for Donald Trump, but I'm not gonna pretend to be involved in this party bullshit. And what I said on Action for Liberty in the interview with those guys who I like, and I think they're trying to do it the right way and they stand for the right values. What I was saying on that podcast is, if we're going to let the Republican Party be about personality and who has the most money, why are we even doing this? I mean, why are we pretending like we're involved in something that's upholding freedom and it's based on our, hardcore fundamental beliefs and values, when really we just become, I don't know, casual bystanders of the process, right? The only way to change this is if we stand up and say some uncomfortable things at some very inopportune moments, to have that courage, like Donald Trump, to change the direction of what the Republican Party has represented in the country. I said the other day on X, we have a crisis in Minnesota politics that stems from a crisis in the Minnesota Republican Party that stems from a crisis of American citizenship and how we think about our identity as American citizens. In the Minnesota's a microcosm for the country. There's a reason why Donald Trump has faced opposition like Mitch McConnell and the Bushes and everybody else. So as we're getting into this BPOU season and BPOUs are getting organized, step up. If you're not in the party, get in the party. Go join your BPOU, your local BPOU. Get involved in the precinct, precinctstrategy.com. No matter where you are in the country, go into the party. I don't want to hear, oh, the Republicans are just as bad as the Democrats. We know that. That's the point. That's why we need you to get involved, right? I mean, I would agree. Obviously, I spend just as much time talking about the corruption in the Republican Party, but really the Republican mindset, as I do the Democrats. Reason being is, to me, it seems easy to see. It seems easy to see where the left and the Democrats are all, lost touch with reality. What's more sneaky and subtle and kind of careful is how the Julia Comans and the Jim Nashes position themselves to protect the status quo and play as controlled opposition. So get in there. Not only get in there, stand up. Stand up. If you see something that doesn't make sense, if you got like I got an email this week, and there's a gentleman who's going to run for chair in his respective BPOU. And he emails me and he emails the campaign and he goes, hey, Royce, I just want to know if I got my facts straight. Last year when you ran, you didn't get a delegate list. You didn't get your name put on any of the mailers that were sent out by the party. And you basically got challenge or resistance from a bunch of the party hierarchy. He's like, do I got my facts right? Because when I stand up at my BPOU, I'm going to make these things known because I didn't appreciate that. Number one, that says that I'm a viable candidate because people were interested enough and they saw how shady the Republican establishment here in Minnesota treated me as the Senate candidate last go around. So that's number one. But number two, this guy's got the balls to stand up and say something. And he doesn't know if it's going to have what effect it's going to have. He doesn't know if it's going to land on the would-be audience there at the BPOU meeting. I'm sure if he lives in a part of the state where he thinks that way, it tends to be that we live in a part of the state where other people think very similar, or at least some people think very similar. So he may have some reception wherever he is. But the point is, he's doing what American citizens are supposed to do. Step up, say something. Now is your time. If you don't step up and say something in these BPOU meetings, then there is no Republican Party. It's just an off gas, what we call an off gas. It's a way for American citizens who lean more to the right or have more conservative traditional values, believe in having a country, borders, believe in being responsible with the debt, or whatever your line of country is in the Republican Party. All it ends up being is a machine that sucks you into it and churns your energy in a big circle, and spits you out. That's what it ends up being. It ends up taking all the Americans who actually give somewhat of a fuck about their country and their citizenship. It just brings you in and just kind of flattens them all out. To meat grinder, you could say.
The second line of defense if you get past the stone wall.
Yes, if you get past the stone wall, let's say the Royce Whites we're not even going to let in. We don't know how you radical, crazy, unhinged people got endorsed, became the party nominee. It goes to show you how wild of a time it is, in a good way, that I could even become the nominee, right? Because these type of, checks and balances do exist. But if you get past that stone wall, then the process itself is meant to grind you into dust, right? And so the only way to combat that is if you stand up and say uncomfortable shit at inopportune moments, like I did at the Carver County Republicans. And I said, and Julia Coleman, she got up there, and we're going to support Trump's agenda. She wants to do Doge Minnesota, and everybody loves it. It's like, but you don't really support Donald Trump. See, when you say things like Royce White is a bad candidate because he uses foul language, right? You're saying you don't support Donald Trump, because that's the same thing they said about him. If you say that Royce is alleged to be abusive or what do they say? Sexist, right? Royce uses this type of language online, so he doesn't respect women. Then you're saying you don't support a man who is a convicted, liable rapist, right? You're saying that E. Jean Carroll making a claim that Donald Trump raped her with no evidence whatsoever and was awarded $90 million by a corrupt judicial system, kangaroo court. Then how can you support Donald Trump? You don't support Donald Trump. Even if you try and pretend that you support him, anybody who's has half a brain and worth their salt can tell by all of the ancillary things that you say, your expectations, your standards about culture and things. We can tell that you don't really support Donald Trump. You're tolerating Donald Trump. You may be afraid of Donald Trump. You may be afraid of the MAGA movement. You may be afraid of what opposing Donald Trump would do to your career, Julia Coleman. But you don't really support him as a person. And therefore, you don't really support the philosophy that underpins and undergirds the MAGA movement. The philosophy is we're done with all of this pre-baked, pre-prepped, curated, puppet, polished, mealy-mouthed politician thing. We're done with, hi, I'm Julia Coleman, and I'm, Norm Coleman's daughter-in-law, and I have a husband who's Norm's son, and we have 3 beautiful children, and we've been married for 8 years, and I want to be your senator. And it's just like, yeah, okay, cool. You can give me the elevator pitch, and you can make it sound as good as you want, and you can dress as fine as you want, and you could put the best perfume on, and you could even look somewhat pretty, not my cup of tea, but, you're another man's wife anyway. My point is, all of that means nothing if you don't say military-industrial complex, right?
No,
I mean, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
All of that means nothing if you won't say we have to stop funding this Ukraine war. All of it means nothing if you don't point, in Doge, Minnesota Doge. Okay, where were all you Republicans at and that now are on the Doge train? Where were you all at? You all, many of you, Norm, even Norm, many of you all come from the exact same thought process that informed this sort of uniparty DC elite that has $5 trillion in bank treasury transfers that are untraceable. And the perfect, it's coming up, guys. The reason I'm bringing this up and I'm spinning now is 25 minutes. We're going to get rolling with the reaction videos here in a moment, but it's coming up now. The biggest issue, if you're in a local BPOU or you're involved in some of the party process, even right now, 18 months out from when the election season is really going to kick into high gear. The main issue is coming up right now in March. The budget bill, the continued resolution, the debt ceiling, it's all right here in early March. This vote that's going to come in early March is going to tell you exactly where everybody is. It's going to tell you where Donald Trump is. It's going to tell you where everybody is. It's going to tell you a lot about a lot. It's going to tell you a lot about everything. And the continued resolution and these budgets and these omnibuses and this raising of the debt ceiling, this is the whole scam. And the reason why most people don't even know about it isn't on accident. The reason you don't understand, a lot of people don't even realize how important the continued resolution and deficit, or let's say debt ceiling, are, is because they always sprinkle you with the WWE. Wedge issues. Oh, black people are stealing cars again. Look at it. Another black man shot another black man. It's like the Muslims are coming. It's Fox News fear porn. And I get it. Those things aren't nothing. It's not like I'm saying these things aren't an issue. We don't need to worry about these things. We do. Even abortion at a level, right? I'm not saying that we shouldn't have an opinion on abortion. Of course we should, and people know mine. Exact fact, I've been lambasted by the Democrats. I was used as sort of a soundbite against Donald Trump in the last election for my comments about the feminist movement and abortion. So, my views on it are personally, morally, ethically, as a Catholic, are made public, and I don't take a step back from those whatsoever. But I'm not stupid enough to let abortion become such a big issue that the debt ceiling becomes, takes a back seat. Mm-hmm. And if you do that, you're a fool, and you deserve you deserve the government you get, and you deserve to have your money stolen. So, all in all, get involved in the party, stand up and speak the truth. These BPOU meetings aren't supposed to be fun, picnics, social gatherings. Oh, let's get together and say, "Whoa, we won! Donald Trump's president. We're all Republicans. Yippee!" No. We have a crisis in the Republican Party because there were still people that wanted to put Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis up and say they're the viable candidates. They're the more electable candidates. Well, we know now in retrospect, they weren't more electable. They weren't more electable in the primary, but Donald Trump actually won. So, I think we can put a nice, pretty bow and set that whole mindset to the side, but they won't. Because it wasn't ever about Donald Trump. It was about what Donald Trump represents and what those two candidates represent, which is not a departure from the status quo whatsoever. Nikki Haley for sure, Ron DeSantis in a more subtle way, but I pointed it out to Dustin Gragey, and I trounced his ass in the debate we had with one single fact. Ron DeSantis made the claim that Russia shot first, that Russia's the aggressor by all standards of Westphalian tradition, the Westphalian nation state, Western society, the Monroe Doctrine, you police your own backyard. Russia did not shoot first. We provoked Russia. Unrelenting provocation of the Russians with our expansion of NATO. And not only that, there seems to be a little thing that keeps, falling in the cracks here, where we gave short-range ballistic missiles and other types of weapons to Ukraine. We supported a coup, and the Ukraine were sending missiles over into the Russian-speaking part of Ukraine before this war ever popped off.
It was like 2014, correct?
Right. When Ukraine they were shooting munitions into the Russian-speaking areas of Ukraine.
Yeah.
Right? And so, not Russia, not territorial Russia, but the Ukrainian side, where people were more Russian-speaking, there was a war starting then. And people just tend to forget about it, which is crazy because it's not like hidden. You can go to many of the mainstream media outlets and read about this part of the war that started back in 2014. I know we spend so much time online jerking off, people don't, dig deep into what they're actually have an opinion on, which is part of the problem. So, Nikki Haley represents that, and even Ron DeSantis represents that. Nikki Haley, a little more overt with it. She wanted to have an unrestricted open war with Russia. Ron, he had to toe the line because part of his platform and base is MAGA. More the vaccine and abortion for him. Not so much about the military. Shocker. Ex-military guy, went to Yale, believes in the Atlanticist geopolitical foreign policy of the establishment. And so you get piecemeals, right? Like people will say, oh, Donald Trump's not really MAGA or America first enough because he, supported the vaccine at a time, or he's, a little bit less strict with his pro-life stance. So you're going to get pieces and bits and pieces from everybody. But the bottom line is Donald Trump was touched by God, number one. He won, number two. And number three, he's the person who they're most afraid of, obviously, and the things he's doing in the earliest weeks of this administration are just shaking up the entire globe. I mean, did you see the UN Security Council take a neutral position now on Ukraine? That's fucking juice. That's balls, guys. And, that's having a backbone. And all respect to Donald Trump for being able to get that done. It's about fucking time. The UN Security Council made to bend to the will of the American people because we fund the whole thing anyway. It's a sham. The Security Council is a proxy of American, American dominance, superiority, and now it reflects that. So, we're moving in the right direction, but you have to stay vigilant out there, you Republicans. Let's get started with the show and get these reactions going. We got some clips. Some of them are WWE Wedge issues, which you can never really skip over. And
sometimes you got to have some junk food. That's
sometimes you got to have a little, snack or two, but they make for good video content. That's why I gave you 25 minutes of the real blocking and tackling. But here we go. Give me the first one.
You
Tim.
think you're afraid of Trump? You should see how afraid of Trump I am. You better prepare for trans people to
Wedge
make
issue.
this a very unsafe space.
I don't want to spend an hour applying glitter on my face so that you will hear and see me.
I'm shaking right now. I don't want to be here.
Please.
I'm sorry, am I taking too long pleading for my life?
Please wrap up.
Look at me.
Okay, we're all done here. Hey,
Pathetic.
we're all done.
Yeah, wedge issue, WWE politics, the LGBTQ, the whole movement itself is a psyop of controlled opposition out there on the far left flank, intended to draw people's attention to something as absurd as this weird theater that these individuals put on in a formal setting, which they deserve to have an audience because they're American citizens. But the whole thing is meant to be a distraction from shit like the debt ceiling, the continued resolution. And whether they know they're doing it or not really for me to judge. All I can tell you is this is what America had become. And not only are they intended to be a distraction, they intended to strong arm the American political zeitgeist to a level where this was going to be the focus, the primary focus. It wasn't going to be some tertiary distraction, some sideshow. This was going to be the main event, right? This was going to be the headliner every single time we talk about politics or culture in this country. And I'm glad that we're getting back to some sanity. We don't want to let full-grown men like myself play in the WNBA. It's ridiculous. I could play in the WNBA right now. I mean, if I went trans today and started wearing a dress and said, I think all these years I've really been a woman. Yeah. I'm 30. I'm going on 34 in April. All of the first 33 years of my life were a lie. I've been living a lie. I really am a woman inside. Yeah. And I think I want to join the Minnesota Lynx. Yeah. Now, the Minnesota Lynx and the WNBA is such a political organization that they probably wouldn't even let me play in the WNBA, even though I would definitively be the best player in the entire league because my political views are too extreme, right? In order to play in the WNBA, you kind of have to be pro-LGBTQ almost. This is a huge lesbian contingent in the WNBA. That's not a opinion or conjecture. That's just kind of public knowledge. And, that doesn't have any bearing on them playing. This still probably the best women basketball players in the world. But I'm just saying that tells you how convoluted the whole thing really gets between the feminist movement and the LGBTQ. If I decided to play in the WNBA tomorrow, technically, there would be a lot of people on their side. I don't know if this is your right or left. On their side, this is my left, be a lot of people who say I should be able to do it. Why not? It's totally ridiculous. I mean, it makes a mockery of the women's game. And you shouldn't even put the word women in front of basketball then. And that's why this part of the wedge issue is dangerous, because it's like the gift that keeps on giving. It's so absurd. It sometimes distracts the right from more important issues. Because as a pundit or a commentator on the right, I can always say, what is a woman? You don't even know what a woman is, right? And it's like, yeah, that makes for good content. It's funny. And it's true. It's funny and it's true. But I want to talk about the continued resolution and the debt ceiling. That's where politics really are done in this country and really all around the world. So, again, this whole LGBTQ thing to me is one big distraction. I'm glad we're putting a cap on it finally and getting back to some sanity. And let's do the same with our American mentality. And while we're on that, one more second, I just want to comment on this. I brought the WNBA up. I mean, I didn't even mean to do that, but if I played in the WNBA, I'd be the MVP for sure. I mean, it wouldn't even be close. And it's all due respect to some of those women's players. I tell people all the time, I got respect for the women's basketball players. When I was growing up, I saw a lot of girls in women's basketball. My grandfather coached my aunt and my god sister on a younger women's basketball team, and there are some very good women's basketball players. I mean, they're these guys who say, women's basketball sucks, or women, yeah, okay, the women aren't as good as the men. They're not as physically gifted as the men. That's obvious. But there are some women basketball players who will dog some men who think they're good enough to play because they play at Lifetime on the weekends. I could say that 100%. Now, if you take the best 16-year-old boys basketball player in the world, right? If you take the best 16-year-old 10th grader, maybe even 9th grade, if you take the best 9th grade boy in the world and put him in the WNBA, he'd be the MVP, because there's just that much of a difference physically between men and women, which shouldn't be controversial, but somehow it's become that. So I'd be the MVP in the WNBA. But again, it is important to note that the WNBA is very political, and women's sports is very political. And I saw an example of it, and I forgot to put this clip in there, but there was a clip of Aja Wilson, I think her name is, from the WNBA, on the sideline. A lot of you probably remember this clip, but this was a while back. And she was talking about how she liked Paige Buchers because Paige, acknowledged how her white privilege put her over the top in a sense.
Did she?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Do you know Aja Wilson?
No, but I know Paige. I really like Paige. I didn't know she said something like that.
Yeah, and Aja, I think, won MVP. If not, she was in the running for MVP, and she's a hell of a player. I mean, she's a monster by women's standards. Big, strong, skilled, relatively skilled. So I'm not taking anything away from Aja, but even the best of us become politicized and have our worldview warped by this narrative. That's how powerful it is, right? So LeBron James, right? You can't take anything away from LeBron as a basketball player, athlete, but you can say, definitively that his political worldview is batshit, hypocritical. But anyway, yeah. So on the Paige Buchers thing, and I want to share this, and let's make sure that we clip this because I want to put this out. Paige Buchers is a Hopkins basketball alum, and she played with my siblings, and she came up during the same time as my siblings, and I was able to watch her grow up firsthand. And I'm talking about from being a 6th, 7th grader, little tiny little 7th grade girl playing varsity in the 7th grade, which isn't easy for anybody. Easier in women's basketball than it would be in men's, but yet and still, she was very, very good. And there's one story, Paige, there's nothing about Paige's story that says privileged. She comes from a single father household. Her dad sort of raised her on her own. on his own. And that's difficult in and of itself, right? I mean, fathers who raise children on their own is not easy. And mothers who raise children on their own is not easy. Fathers, it's even a little different because just traditionally how the human species works, men are not typically geared to be the primary caregiver, nurturer of the children, right? Yeah. So there's a component, there's a complexity to that whole deal. Anyway, Paige's success has very little, if anything, to do with privilege. Paige was a successful basketball player. She is a successful basketball player and will continue to be as long as God willing and she has health. She's healthy. She will continue to be a successful basketball player because she put more time in than everybody else. It's that simple. I'll give you one example. This must have been her 10th grade year. I knew she was going to be great. This was her 10th grade year. And my brother had just transferred to Hopkins from St. Thomas Academy. And my sister was at De La Salle, who's now at Indiana State. She's playing this season, playing okay. But I used to take them to Lifetime and train with them. And we go to Lifetime right up there at St. Louis Park, which a lot of the kids from this Hopkins area and the West Metro suburbs go to that Lifetime. And I got up there around 4:30 in the afternoon, right after school, which would have been right after, what would normally be basketball practice during the season. But we had practice off that day, so we decided to go up to the gym. And the gym's packed. I mean, the gym is just packed 100. You can barely move around in there, right? There's so many kids in there right after school, so many people in there right after school, right after work. And Paige is in there. And she's just dribbling around, and she's, whatever space she could find, she was finding it, and she was just practicing by herself, just dribbling, kind of, just working on ball handling. And even watching her there as a professional, because, I'm a professional basketball player, and, I understand what I'm looking at when I'm looking at people, even when they're bouncing the ball, just from the rhythm, and you can kind of see their imagination working. Do they dribble the ball as though somebody's actually in front of them? Or do they kind of dribble the ball independently like they're all by themselves in the gym? And that's the mark of a good player or not, their ability to imagine situations when they practice. And I could see her doing that. I could see her kind of imagining that there was a defender there. And me and my brother and sister, we left. We end up and we leave, and we're going to come back later when we know the gym's going to be cleared out. We came back at around 8:30, 9 o'clock, and she was still in there. She was still in there by herself. And now the gym's completely cleared out almost, and she's just in there, dribbling, shooting, dribbling, boom, 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 shooting, dribbling, shoot. And me and I take my little brother and sister, and we start to do drills on one half of the court, and she asked to get in the drill. Not only had she been there for about 4 or 5 hours straight, the night was almost up, and she wanted more work, okay? There's nothing privileged about that. And so when we try and use racial politics to conflate somebody's skin color or their appearance with hard work and passion and dedication and discipline and the rare ability to care so much about a craft, whether it's basketball or whether you make pottery. It doesn't really, it doesn't matter what it is, but to care so much about it that you're willing to spend more time doing it than 99.9% of the other people on the planet, that's a grave, grave error. And Aja Wilson, you really showed your ignorance and your immaturity when you say things like Paige Buchers understands her privilege. And I know Paige got up there and accepted an ESPY, I think, and she kind of said, I understand that I'm privileged because I'm a white woman and I'm in a sport that's dominated by black women. Look, if that's what Paige feels she needs to say and that's what she feels in her heart, then God bless her. And if, okay, I'm not giving you guys that because I know the young girl personally. She worked harder than most people. Paige spent more time in the gym than maybe any player that I've ever known, man or woman.
I've never been in a gym for more than 3 hours, so she's got me beat.
I mean, but even by professional basketball player standards.
Yeah.
It's certainly high school. She spent more time in the gym as a high school player than most any players that I've ever known or been around. And that speaks volumes of her. And so, she worked hard. She put more time in than anybody else. That's what makes her great. That the shit you see her do isn't by accident. It's not a coincidence. She didn't just wake up like, whoa, I'm white. And because I'm white and all these white fans want me to do well, I can put the ball in between my legs and make the pass on time, right on target consistently. Sports don't work like that. It's like saying Larry Bird was privileged. No, Larry Bird was a motherfucker. I mean, the stories from the black players, go listen to some stories from the black players about Larry Bird, who thought Larry Bird was some type of punk or something because he was white. Larry Bird was an animal, and he talked shit, and he wasn't scared, and he would box. He would throw punches, and he would throw punches whether you were white or black. I mean, Larry Bird is one of the all-time greats. We all know it, but sports ain't one of these things we need to be conflating with this racial woke politic bullshit. And I just thought I'd share that story about Paige because I saw her grow personally, and I just it's disrespectful. It's blasphemous. It's blasphemous to the game of basketball. It's blasphemous to any craft in the world to try and conflate, woke, what they call white privilege, with somebody who worked as hard as Paige. And that's why you Democrats are losing. And that's why eventually you're going to lose the people like Paige. You may have not lost her yet, but as time goes on, you're going to lose those people because, hard work is hard work. Now, does she have a gym membership? Could you say, hey, not everybody can afford a gym membership? Yeah, fine. If you want to say that, that's cool. But at the end of the day, if you want to get good at something, you find the time and the place. You find a time and a place, whether I'm, Lady Gaga and I ended up at some, great performing arts school and I learned, drama and theater or to play the instruments under great tutelage, or, I found a keyboard in the back of of an alley, that was thrown out, tossed out, and I taught myself to play on that keyboard. It doesn't matter. When you really love something and you're obsessed with it and you want to be great at it, we have to separate these people from all the other bullshit. Let's get to the next clip.
I want to speak directly to people who are undocumented. We love you. We care about you. In the city of Minneapolis, we will stand up for you, and we will do anything in our power to help. Because you're not an alien in our city, you're a neighbor. Now, in Minneapolis, we have what is called a separation ordinance. And that separation ordinance states clearly that our city officials, our police officers and beyond, will not be gathering information showing who is and who is not documented. We do not ask the question with regard to immigration status, and because we haven't asked the question, we don't have any data to show documentation status in our city. Our police officers will not be cooperating with federal law enforcement around federal immigration law. We enforce state and local laws here in Minneapolis, and we will do so to the best of our ability. But as for cooperation with ICE, the answer is no. And so, again.
Well, there you see Mayor Jacob Fry, mayor of Minneapolis, basically making a definitive statement that they will not be working with Donald Trump and the rest of the federal government to get rid of the illegal immigrants that have made their way into our country under the Joe Biden illegitimate regime. And, you Minnesotans, it's just crazy. I had some Republicans email the campaign and saying, we like you as a candidate and we think you're the only one who can win, but what do you make of Elon Musk and Donald Trump laying off federal employees? And I mean, this is a prime example. Not that Jacob Fry is a federal employee, but my point is the way the government's been working is on full display, right? I mean, whether it's $5 trillion of non-traceable payments being sent out in checks from our government, or it's the Social Security that for some reason we're paying people who are 170 years old, they're still getting Social Security, and it's in the millions. It's not like 20. It's not a rounding error. It's 1 million people or so just in the 140 to 149-year-old age bracket. And I think there was another million or so in every 10-year age bracket all the way down to 100. And I would venture to guess there are not many 100-year-olds, certainly not a million 100-year-olds. Maybe there are, I'm not sure. But anyway, money's getting thrown around all over the place. And just government is not working the way that it's supposed to. And there's one thing for us to be in debt, what you would call natural debt, right? There's some natural debt, right? There are things that we have to pay for. There are things we have to build roads and whatnot, and it's going to take money every year. And sometimes the taxpayer income doesn't square that bill. That makes complete and total sense. The what's becoming obvious now is that there is money out here that is completely financialized, materialized out of thin air. And it's not even, and the scary part is not getting to where it's supposed to get to. And then we have illegal immigrants that were allowed to come into our country, and somehow some of the money ends up in their hands. Not some, a lot, too much by many American standards, which is one of the big reasons I think Donald Trump was elected. And the whole reason I bring this up is, for some reason, down in Minneapolis, we have a situation where Jacob Fry, who just openly spits in the face of his fellow American citizens and his Minneapolis constituents, continues to get reelected. And I ask myself all the time, how?
How long has he been in office?
I think this is like his third term, maybe.
So he was overseeing, because I remember right around COVID times.
Right,
that
COVID, 2020, George Floyd.
I couldn't go into restaurants in Minneapolis unless I showed a vaccine card.
He was there.
That's crazy that you have to show identification that you got this done.
Right.
But if you're here illegally, don't worry, we're not coming to look for you.
That's a fair point, Tyler.
It's
Jacob
the hypocrisy.
Fry. They're one of your young constituents right here in the studio asking the basic question: why during COVID I had to show a vaccine card, which had no scientific merit whatsoever. Now that we look back in retrospect, there's plenty of merit to ask about somebody's citizenship.
Yeah.
I mean, there were no laws but you guys tried to fast track laws to the books about COVID. There are already laws on the books about immigration, being a citizen or not being a citizen in this country, living here legally or illegally. And you just basically dismiss and disregard one set of laws, and you want to enforce another set of laws. And then you want to talk about democracy. I mean, it's a joke. And not only that, he stands up there and he does it in such a brazen and pompous way. And there's Ilhan Omar standing right over his right shoulder. And you got Jeremiah Ellison, Keith Ellison's son, standing back there behind him. And a bunch of other woke LGBTQ activists, I'm sure, surrounding him. And, of course, they got to have the sign language person as a virtue signal to all of the disabled and deaf who may want to participate in this event. But you don't want to give them actual rights, see? And even that's a scam. It's like, here's this sign language person to represent how we want to include everybody, but let a deaf person say, I don't want to take a vaccine, and you guys act like he's, deplorable, right? Because there are deaf people who probably voted for Donald Trump. I'm not sure how many, but I would venture to guess there are, just like there are black people. Myself, black people are important until you wear a MAGA hat, then you're not. We see it clear as day, but to say you're not going to participate with enforcing the laws just tells you in Minneapolis, they live in a lawless city. And in Minnesota, we are kind of ruled by a lawless regime. Yeah, so next clip. Oh, more from the woke left. Here we go.
Which side are you on? We'll fight against Doge. We'll fight Elon Musk. No Elon scab within our walls. We'll fight from dawn to dusk. Oh, which side are you on? Which side are you on? Tell me. Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
Got a little catchy towards the end, I guess.
Well, it definitely starts to frame up how they're going to paint this next chapter. And I said it. Remember in the earliest days after we won, Donald Trump won, I said these people are going to regroup. They're going to coalesce. This plays well for the Marxists. This is why I told Jake Duesenberg on Action for Liberty on Truth Hurts. Yeah, Donald Trump won the narrative, and that's where the win stops, in my opinion. Let's not be mistaken. He won the narrative. He won the public consensus. And because he won the narrative, because he won the public consensus, they had to hold back on the cheating. Too many people were watching. They were watching the machines. They were watching the polls. They were, too many people, the Elon Musks of the world, all these tech guys got involved, and now they're watching on the tech side to see, and so everybody was really paying close attention, and you find a bunch of votes that were missing from the 2020 election, and I think they held back the cheating. The question is why? I think it's because they didn't want to spend that last bit of credibility. And you got to tip your hat to them for that, because had they spent that last bit, they're already spending they're already spending every ounce of credibility they have to even forward a political movement with this at the forefront, right? Mm-hmm. Your average American person's looking at this kind of shit and going, this is crazy. I mean, this is like out there, right? But there are some people who only kind of passively follow politics through headlines and, controlled news and controlled narrative and whatnot. And they might be still roped into the shit. But at the end of the day, it's my opinion that they held back on the cheating because they believe they can wait Donald Trump out. And it just is a fact that he has a 4-year shelf life on this term. And there's only so much he can do. The rest of it's going to be on us. And what the Democrats and the Marxists and the globalists are basically saying is, sure, okay, Donald Trump inspired a movement that is, a unicorn in the course of American and human history. And as much as we hate it, we got to take it on the chin. There's no choice, right? I mean, it's just kind of an anomaly. That's why they were so flustered and angered by his continued success. No matter what they threw at him, he just kept getting more popular, right? Well, it's a little thing called the truth, Joy Ann Reid and company. I mean, it's not fucking rocket science. The shit he's saying is just much more true than the shit you guys were trying to push on people. And the human spirit yearns for the truth, and it yearns for freedom. So when one person steps up and tells the truth, even if it's not 100% true, even if it has some holes and flaws, and Donald Trump has them just like we all do, it's still much more true than the shit you guys were saying. And so that's why he had success. And so, but my point in saying that is he's an anomaly. So their goal now is to try and wait out the anomaly. Yeah, let the anomaly correct itself. And the way it corrects itself is by we, the people, you Republican citizens down there at your local BPOU level, not really grasping fundamentally who Donald Trump is, what he represents, what the MAGA movement represents, and upholding that 10 toes down until the very end of your life, and to teach it to your kids until the end of their life. That's the only way we win going forward. If not, in 4 years, we're going to get some plant. In 8 years, we're going to get ransacked and overcome. And they're going to say, oh, well, that Donald Trump era, that was too extreme. We didn't get enough done. It's blah, 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 right? I mean, they're going to just try and whitewash, for lack of a better term, the whole Donald Trump and MAGA movement and reconstruct the thing that they had going. That's their plan. That's their only play. Their only play is to try and wait him out, right? To try and wait him out, get enough people around him that they hope can influence him to not break enough of the thing so that they can still have something to salvage when they go back in control in the future. And we're the only thing standing against that. So understand that.
DOJ says they found almost $5 trillion in payments that are untraceable. The budget line is blank, and they're worried about your Bitcoin. 5 trillion, untraceable. No idea where it went and how it was spent. A $5 trillion blank check. Social Security sent out $72 billion in bad checks. Guess who resigned last night? The head of Social Security. Right when DOJ asked Michelle King to have a seat because she was about to get canned, she says, "You can't fire me because I quit." And the press is acting like this isn't suspicious.
You may assert there's no waste in the Pentagon. You may assert there's no waste in
Stephen,
Treasury.
I'm not
you may assert
I don't
there's
think
no waste in
would assert that,
HHS.
Stephen.
Stephen, I don't think anyone...
Then why are you not celebrating these cuts? If you agree there is waste, if you agree there is abuse, if you agree there is corruption, why are you not celebrating the cuts, the reforms that are being instituted? Every day that no action is taken, the entire
Stephen, let's calm
salaries
down.
of American workers that are taxed disappear forever.
Stephen, let's calm down.
This is
We're not having a debate
there's no reason
about whether there are places...
You are clearly trying to debate me, and I will be as I want to be about the fact that we are saving Americans billions of dollars.
Nope. Fox News. And there you see Fox News giving us a look into CNN. And CNN has obviously decided they're going to double down on the anti-Trump or the Trump derangement syndrome. Stephen Miller's just hitting them with facts, and they haven't even come up with a good counter move yet. I mean, and they will. Don't get me wrong. I mean, one of these political pundits will come up with some sophistry. You know, we call that, sophistry, right? They'll come up with some catchy little angle to try and combat what we're doing. It's going to get increasingly hard because at the end of the day, when $5 trillion of taxpayer money goes missing or it's untraceable, you can't account for it. I'm not quite sure what the angle would be there. I'm not sure how you're going to spin that one. I mean, that's going to be a difficult story to spin, but they'll try nonetheless. And Stephen Miller's just throwing down good old MAGA way. Good for him. Shout out to Stephen Miller. Glad you're taking it to him. Not afraid to go in the belly of the beast. Keep going in the belly of the beast. That's exactly what we need. And I'm glad that he's talking about the money. The money. Don't let him off the hook. Let's talk about the money. $5 trillion untraceable payments from our government. I think they said they confiscated some, 4 million credit cards that had 4 million credit cards, federal government credit cards that had, accrued $40 billion in charges last year. $40 billion in charges, which if you take 4 million credit cards, it ends up being around $10,000 per credit card, right? But shit, I mean, it's $40 billion.
Yeah, it adds up.
Yeah, I mean, come on. And let me say this again, the real issue with, somebody said, back to the Republican who said, well, what do you think about Elon Musk and Trump firing federal employees? I think it's great. I think it's absolutely wonderful. I think it's needed. I think it's way overdue. See, and you got to understand, this goes back to a fundamental political philosophy. If the government is the sole biggest creator of new jobs, everybody goes on the government payroll, then your government becomes by default sort of kind of an economic totalitarian state. It's because nobody can really challenge the federal government. Nobody can challenge the efficiency, or let's even say the morality or the ethics of that guilty system they all talked about when George Floyd died. Oh, the whole system is guilty. That's like the calling card of the left when a black man gets killed by a cop. The whole system is guilty. Burn the system down, but not the $5 trillion in untraceable payments, right? You see what I mean? It's just, if the federal government has everybody on the payroll, you can't really hold it accountable morally, ethically, legally, kind of culturally, even, in a spiritual sort of way. It just becomes WWE.
Yeah.
And that's what the left is. And that when I was out there in the streets when George Floyd died, that's probably the greatest education I got, was to see how much of the left's political movement is really just theater. It's just, it's just happy talk. It's like Kendrick Lamar. I'll give you an example again. It's like, and I saw Charleston White, he made a great comment about Kendrick Lamar's Super Bowl performance. He said, man, revolution is never about symbols. Now, are there symbols during revolutions? Sure, right. The symbolism plays some role during revolutions. However, it's not the central driving force. Symbols aren't the central driving force. It's the ideology and the actions people are willing to take based on that ideology that are the driving force of revolution. So you can have as many pretty symbols as you want, whether it's a Ukraine flag or an LGBTQ flag, or it's a Marxist, the hammer and sickle, or you got the syringe or the mask online, or what. You can have all these symbols you want. But at the end of the day, all you motherfuckers are in on it, because when the government goes to steal $5 trillion, you turn a blind eye. As long as the government's the biggest creator of new jobs and they have more and more American citizens on the payroll, they can always justify their continued misuse of authority. That is what they've been doing. Every time a continued resolution comes around and they say the same thing. If we don't pass another bill to raise the debt ceiling so we could steal more of your money, the government's going to shut down. Look how many people work for us. It's like the greatest excuse in human history to keep stealing money. Oh, we can't shut down. We can't shut the government down. Too many people work for us, right? They'll be out of jobs. It's like, well, Donald Trump's basically saying this is where the rubber meets the fucking road, all right? Some people going to be out of some jobs because we're not going to continue to let the government use the people as an excuse to steal their money. And think of this, Tanner. I mean, this is really crazy. They actually are using you. It's like black people. They're using black people as an excuse to make life worse for black people. They're using the federal government as an excuse to steal money from the people who work for the federal government.
The money never leaves their pockets.
This is the definition of a Ponzi scheme. And what do you get out of it? I mean, you get a fentanyl crisis. You get a military who's too big and becoming more and more obsolete. You get potholes in your city streets. You can't even fill the fucking potholes. I mean, what are you getting out of it? Just tell me. You get inflated prices at your hospitals, for services. They give you a fucking Tylenol in the emergency department, and they charge you 700% for one Tylenol that you never have to pay for, by the way, because it just gets squared in some bill, and some other organizations are inflating the prices and paying each other with phony money that comes, again, from the government. I mean, it's just sick. It's obscene. So if you're out there and you're wondering what Donald Trump's doing, we're getting to the fucking bottom of this shit once and for all. Next clip.
This is unbelievable. And explain to me how this is not treason. Watch this.
$40 million per week in taxpayer money is ending up in the hands of the Taliban. Cash is flown by charter jets into Afghanistan. It's auctioned off to the Taliban in order to exchange it for the Afghan currency. From there, the Taliban will get it to the NGOs who have to pay taxes on that money. The NGOs have to be approved by the Taliban. And every time the NGOs spend the money, the Taliban will take a cut. When the money is exchanged for the Afghan currency, the Taliban take a cut. The Taliban also determine who can receive foreign aid. Most of the time, these people are either Taliban or Al-Qaeda. These people are the sworn enemies that hate Christians and Jews and treat women like cattle. Why on earth are we allowing U.S. dollars to end up in their hands?
Yeah, giving money to the Taliban under the Joe Biden illegitimate regime. Shocker. New World Order loves giving money to terrorists. Loves giving money to religious extremists who destabilize the region. It gives you a good justification to go into the region and fight a perpetual war. Yeah. Saw the video. I'm not going to play the video on today's show, but there's this AI generated video, I suppose. So they're saying an AI generated video that Donald Trump reposted. Trump Gaza or something like that. I don't know. Did you see it, Tanner?
I did not.
No, there's a Trump Gaza video. I'm sure you could find it pretty easily online right now. But, like I said on Monday, if you watch the full interview of me with Action Liberty, I said on Monday, look, I like the Gaza plan. I really do. And do I know exactly how it all plays out? No, I'm not sure. But the bottom line is what we've been doing in the Middle East for the last 2, 3, 4 generations through American foreign policy didn't work. It just didn't work. It failed. And we got to come to grips with that. It's sort of mea culpa, because we played a role in it. And we played an active role in it. We weren't just innocent bystanders watching, viewing, observing. We were actively involved in all of the ups and downs that have taken place in that region. Are we solely responsible? No. Not going to let anybody say that either. We're not solely responsible, but we definitely played an active role. And at the bottom line is, they got us in a Gordian knot right there. Look, I want good things for the Palestinians. I want good things for the Jews. Would love for them to stop fighting. They've been fighting for 2,000 years. Will they ever love each other and join hands? Supposedly, some of them have. Some of them want peace, but some of them obviously don't. And the some who don't want peace can spoil it for everybody, and that's just a reality of the human condition, of human existence. And so I want good things for both of them. And I think Donald Trump genuinely wants good things for the Palestinians and the Jews as well. But the reality is the way that the thing is set up right now makes it very hard to do that, to accomplish that. And if the people of Palestine, look, and this, I got a lot of Palestinian friends, and I know a lot of people who are sympathetic to the Palestinian cause. If you really believe that the Palestinians live in an open-air prison, why wouldn't you want to leave? And I get if there's some religious or ethnic or cultural, identity or loyalty to that place, but at some point you got to cut your losses and go. And that's the story of everybody. We cut our losses from Europe. Americans cut our losses from Europe at some point today. There's a better opportunity out there. Let's go. Even in the earliest days of the Jewish and Christian tradition, the Jews that were there in Israel, like the great Paul himself and St. Peter, even, as from a Catholic standpoint, but even they ventured up into Rome, into Europe. I mean, they came from Israel, but they ended up in Rome, right? So this is the story of people. Look, it's crazy to me. On one end, you say, well, the Palestinians have to be beholden to this land, but everybody else can immigrate here from everywhere else. Ain't that fucking strange?
Yeah.
The Palestinians have to have this one strip of land that's about as big as Miami, right? My South Beach even. I mean, not Miami, but just say Greater Miami, okay. But it's about as big as a city, not even. They have to have this one piece of land based on this sort of cultural, nostalgic, historical tie, or else we've let colonialism, run amok. But everybody else from everywhere else can immigrate here for whatever reason is driving them away from their homeland.
Yeah, and even like the talk back to that, because they'll go like, well, you're on stolen land anyways. So then why the hell are you guys trying to come here?
Right.
Like that doesn't make makes no sense.
I mean, you guys got to get your first principles in order. Look, and we can have these conversations. I have no problem with it. And we can whittle it all the way down to the history, where people came from and why. I'm fine with that. We don't want to do away with history. But let's actually have that conversation, and then let's make it make sense. At some point, you talk about these things long enough, somebody gets emotional, the conversation doesn't go where they want, and they just disconnect. They disengage from it, and they go on with their half half-baked point of view. And again, I'm not sympathetic to the Palestinians whatsoever. What I'm saying is, if you live in an open air prison, you really believe that, and I tend to agree with that. Actually, I'm just going to go on the record and say, I tend to agree that it's an open-air prison because their freedom of movement is restricted. They're surrounded on all sides, and they can't move about freely. That's, in effect, un-American by our standards here at Free People Radio, and I think our founding fathers as well. So, okay, you live in an open-air prison. Why wouldn't you want to have America and a coalition of nations put up some money to relocate you to a place that's going to be an oasis? That's going to be beautiful. That's going to have great infrastructure. That you will have some more freedom of movement. You will be able to come and go freely, or with some more freedom than you have been going. Why wouldn't you want that? That seems like a reasonable solution given what's going on there. Now, if you just want to stay and fight because you say, hey, this is our home, like me, this is Minnesota. I could move to Texas. I could move to Oklahoma. I can move to Utah. I can move to a Republican state, and I can move to Florida. A lot of Minnesotans do, especially in their older age. I'm not probably old enough to retire and move to Florida, but a lot of Minnesotans do it. I could do that, but this is my home. I have some honor and to stand and sort of fight for the future of Minnesota. If you want to do that in Gaza, fine, but we're not coming to fight with you. We're not sending our sons and daughters to fight with you. We're not sending our sons and even more importantly, our money to fight with you. And if the greater, and to be honest, why us? You know? And this pendulum swings both ways. I don't want to get into some very deep, long geopolitical thing about Israel and Palestine, but I've been telling people the rubber really meets the road with Israel. When it comes to all this foreign policy stuff, we can talk about it, but when push comes to shove, the issue is going to be about Israel and Palestine. That is like the sort of wedged in, Gordian knot of the entire post-World War II Democrat liberal order, United Nations, and the globalist project. We can always kind of recenter back around Israel and Palestine. Okay, so and this pendulum swings both ways. It's like, oh, the Muslims are coming. They're not coming. I mean, let's just cut the shit. All the fear porn about the Muslims is getting to be obnoxious now, really. Because, they had a chance to stand up and fight for Palestine. They all said that they would. It's not like a theoretical chance. They had the literal chance, circumstantial chance to stand up and coalesce together as the Muslim world and fight against what they're now calling, Israeli expansion or Israeli colonialism. And they didn't. Or let's say they only halfway popped, right? And it was Erdogan. I remember back when Israel was attacked, Erdogan said, oh, this is cross versus the crescent, east versus the west. Erdogan, member of NATO, has NATO's nukes inside Turkey's borders, okay? But he's called himself aligning with the Muslim world because Turkey is a Muslim nation. And then you had, the Iranians and you had, the Yemenis and the Jordanians and Egypt, and all these people had a fucking opinion. And then when push came to shove, they didn't bust a grape. They didn't march 20,000 radical Islamic jihadists up to Israel's border, up to the border of Israel and declare war. They didn't do that. So it's on both sides. It's like the Palestinians, don't be telling me that you're in an open air prison, but you don't want to be moved out and have it paid for and have it be better than it was where you were. And it's the Jews. Don't be telling me the Muslims are coming. The Muslims are coming. That's why we need your money. That's why we need your sons and daughters and your money. No, the Muslims are not coming. They're really not. The Iranians half popped. Sure, I remember the day, they sent 500 rockets up in the air or whatever. The Iron Dome worked. And there were barely any casualties, or at least Israel didn't report the casualties, which is a lack of transparency. I live in fucking Minnesota. How am I supposed to get a gauge of what's really going on a half a world away if you guys want to play fast and loose with all of the intelligence? I only know what they report. They didn't report many casualties when the Iranians shot the missiles into Israel. So obviously they're not coming, okay? At least for now. So let's separate the two and get to some sanity here, right? And that's why I like what Trump is proposing with the Gaza plan. It's like, hey, you Palestinians, you don't like it here anyway in Gaza. You say it's an open-air prison. Come on out of there. And as far as Israel goes, nobody gets our foreign aid without conditions. The conditions are we're not about to be on every side of this war anymore, or any war for that matter. And that shouldn't be controversial. But in the Republican Party, it still is. It's like, no, we're against the Muslims, unlimited aid for Israel. Are you kidding me? No, absolutely not. That doesn't mean we don't support Israel. It just means we're not going to allow Israel to be used as a cudgel to walk us around on some type of leash like we're, some sad puppy. It's not happening. Can't happen. We can't afford it. Hell, Israel can't afford it. It's not that, it's not a choice. It's a matter of fact. We can't afford it anymore. So that's my point. And here, we got Tucker Carlson making a comment with Piers Morgan, and I like what Tucker had to say here. Let the clip play.
If you're intentionally killing civilians, you probably shouldn't beat your chest and brag about it. Maybe you could make. I agree with that. Maybe you make the case that we had to do it or whatever, but you should. I agree. You should weep, and that's evil, and you should just say it's evil. And I know it's really threatening to. Is it evil? Ben Shapiro to say that or whatever. But is it evil to kill civilians on purpose? Yeah, it is. I think it is. Really? Kids and children. Well, how is it not actually? In a war? Well, you can call it whatever you want. How is it right to kill women and children? I didn't say, because I think there is a moral right behind you if you are literally... To kill women and children? If there's a world war that threatens the entire world, yes. Some people killed your kids, like your 8-year-old? Like, well, how is that morally justifiable? Well, because actually you have to, by your criteria... It's disgusting. Okay, so no war is morally justified. I mean, I think it's pretty hard to justify. I mean, yeah, I'm sure, a pure defensive action, sure. But all I'm saying, look, it's all ugly. It's all hard to stomach. I've actually seen some of it up close. Super ugly.
You can say that. You say you hate it.
May I
the fact you quibble with it being morally justified.
To intentionally kill non-combatants, women and children, I think we can say that's wrong. In fact, I thought that was the thing we were fighting against.
Right. I mean, yeah. Right. How do you argue with that? Well, there's a way to argue with everything, right? I mean, you can make the argument that if I'm Hamas and I brainwash kids, or I force women and children to participate in my paramilitary insurgency, or I don't want to say insurgency, but revolution. If on their side they believe it's a righteous revolution, if I force them to participate, then women and children are going to die in war. And women and children tend to die in war no matter where the war is. It could be there in the Middle East. It could be there in Russia, Ukraine. It could be here in America. There was a war that came to our shores on 9/11. A lot of question of who the war came from still to this day. However, there was a war that came to us, and women and children died on that day. So women and children tend to die in war, which is why we should be slow to war, and great kings and great leaders are slow to war, because that tends to be a consequence and a result of war. However, I tend to, again, side with Tucker in saying, if we can't even say that intentionally killing non-combatants, women and children, is wrong, is morally reprehensible, what are we doing here, right? I mean, come on. We got to at least be able to say, and I don't care if it's Israel or not, if Israel or Israeli soldiers intentionally kill non-combatants, women and children, and there's evidence of that, or there's proof of that, or there's even accusation of that, these things should be looked into. To say that they have a right, kind of a carte blanche to do so, it actually undermines Israel. And this is what me and Professor Penn been trying to tell. And again, Professor Penn's Jewish, so I think he has the right to speak on it. I have the right to speak on whatever the fuck I want to speak on, because I'm an American citizen. So, I mean, there's that. But just from a cultural standpoint, I think he has the authority to speak on his own heritage and people, and it undermines the Jewish identity. It undermines the Jewish cause or the Jewish history of being persecuted when you throw out terms like anti-Semitic or not supportive of Israel when it's not warranted. It actually undermines it. It's just like being racist. I don't want people to be called racist if they're not racist, right? Because it undermines what genuine racism is. And it kind of distorts the playing field. It kind of makes it creates a blindness. It's like, well, what is racism now? Well, when you can't define it anymore, before you know it, you got a young man playing in the WNBA, right? It's like, we don't want that. Racism is a very distinguishable thing. If you say, hey, there are too many black people in the country, that's racist. If you say, hey, I hate black people, that's racist. If you say black people are robbing each other down in the cities, that ain't racist. That's true. If you say black people commit more violent crimes per capita than any other group of people, that ain't racist. That's true. I know that as a black man. Okay, so we got to distinguish these things, and if we don't, then we're doing each other a disservice, and I think it's true of the Jewish people in Israel as well. So. Obviously, yeah, there is anti-Semitism, real genuine anti-Semitism. I'm clearly not anti-Semitic. And if you're drawing the line of anti-Semitism all the way out to me, then the word itself is losing all of its meaning, and it's just becoming somewhat of an obnoxious joke in terms of politics. Next clip.
It angers me when people are like, this woke stuff, it's got to go. That's telling me that you don't care about my lived experience. You don't care about the oppression of the LGBTQ community. You don't care about the oppression of the disabled. You don't care about the oppression of immigrants. You don't care about your fellow neighbor. And that is ungodly. That is not Christian. So.
Well, yeah, but you know what the most ironic thing is? They don't care about it, and they don't care about it while wearing big fat crosses around their necks.
Yes.
Pause. And I just want to reiterate every time we get the chance that Ana Navarro is a self-described Republican centrist. That's a Republican you're watching there chime in with radical left woke. Can I say that might get us put off YouTube. But hey, it is what it is. Can you bleep it out?
Yeah, I got you.
Okay, we may have to bleep out Ross. Okay, just because because it's a little too woke out there on the internet for you to say Ross. But honestly, I think Sonny Hostin is Ross. Seriously, the woke mind virus kind of makes people a little. Anyway, Anna Navarro, self-described Republican centrist, is right there affirming it. And this whole notion. Go ahead, play the rest of the clip because this guy explains it well.
Wait, I gotta step in here. Sonny, about your lived
It's
experience.
green screen, obviously.
You're doing better than over 99% of the country. You're not oppressed. And no one is oppressing the disabled. They are oppressed by their disability. And with LGBT, well, taking over every corporation, running the culture with an entire month in your name, and turning every criticism into a hate crime is not exactly oppression. It's called a privilege that others do not have. And with immigrants, I'm an immigrant. I am not oppressed, Sonny. I have the same opportunities as everyone else, and I'm absolutely offended by condescending liberals like you telling me that I am a victim and that I'm oppressed. And all of this cuts right into the core of your wokeness, trading righteousness and virtue signaling to look good while shutting down everyone who doesn't bow to your narrative. Like calling Christians ungodly for not being woke. By the way, try saying that to Muslims who are not woke either, and you will quickly realize just how kind Christians have been to you.
That was edited really good.
It was
that
edited.
guy was green screened.
It was
in,
edited
but that's
great.
awesome.
Obviously, that was green screen, but he makes a perfect point, right? I mean, and you really want to boil down. You really want to distill down this sort of mainstream media woke mind virus. You can keep going back to that video 100 times because he paints the whole thing perfect, and a lot of people have done it, and we have to keep doing it. Don't get me wrong. We have to keep knocking down these crazy sort of culture war, controlled opposition narratives because they're easy. Here's the problem with them: they're easy to force on young people. Let's say that it's easy to force that type of thought process on a young person who's having problems, distinguishing between empathy and what I would say is empathomania, right? I mean, there's empathy, but then there's being empathomanic, and you kind of manic, and Sonny Hostin has that kind of emotionally unstable manic energy about it. That's why she was almost in tears, and she's talking about nothing. Now, some people would say, "Oh, Sonny Hostin, she's just acting." I would tend to disagree. I think that she's actually suffering from empathomania. I think she's actually so detached from reality and this kind of posh, elitist, what she would describe as privileged. I mean, Sonny Hostin's real privileged, by the way. And she kind of lives in this warped world that the mainstream media has created, especially for their celebrities, where they have no touch, with reality and what really goes on for average, everyday people anymore. And so in that vacuum, they kind of are just kind of floating about, trying to latch on to anything that seems like it has meaning. And you can always go to the disaffected and the oppression of the people as a way to kind of stabilize yourself, to find those anchors. It's like, I'm really privileged, I'm rich, and so I have some kind of self-guilt about that, right? I feel some type of resent and regret, what they call survivor's remorse about my own success. And so I just want to help some black people. I just want to help some LGBTQ disabled people. I just want to help some oppressed people. I just want to help send condoms to Mozambique. And okay, your intentions may even be good-hearted, but then you end up being very condescending to people who you say you want to help, like this man who's an immigrant who's saying, why are you speaking on my behalf and saying I'm oppressed? I'm not oppressed. I got opportunities here. I got opportunities I didn't have in where I came from. And even more importantly, he realizes that Christians, by all measures, are very fair and sort of tolerant of all of the attacks against Christianity, much more tolerant and fair than the Muslims tend to be, right? I mean, they just spit on Jesus Christ every chance they get in this country, in the mainstream media, the secular, mainstream establishment. They just spit on Christ every chance they get. And in the Muslim world, they don't really tolerate that. You can't just talk about Muhammad, and disrespect Muhammad. A Muslim will really take up arms and physically engage with you for doing it. And in a lot of places in the world, even here in America. So, this attack on Christianity is getting old. Using it as a trope, saying, "Oh, if you don't accept any and everybody in every way they are, anything goes, then you're not Christian." There's nothing true about that whatsoever. And I say this now since it came up. I saw a quote from Peter Thiel. I don't know if it was accurate or not, but Peter Thiel once said that the problem with Christianity is it's woke. Christianity, now there is some woke Christianity and there is a woke right, but he's saying that Christianity as a tradition is a sort of woke, a hyper woke philosophy or ideology or tradition, because Christianity always sides with the victim. There's nothing true about that at all. I mean, that's like a short read of Christian tradition that's so inaccurate. It almost should discredit Peter Thiel entirely. Because don't speak on some shit that you don't know about. It's like, there are plenty of stories, there are plenty of instances in the Bible, in the Old Testament, and even in the New Testament where it does not side with the victim. And in fact, the fundamental of Christianity on the whole is that sin is real and eternal damnation is possible. And so that's a radical, I mean, there's one thing to be a victim in life. There's another thing to live in eternal damnation for all eternity. So it's not a victim faith at all. So I don't even know where Peter Thiel is coming from with that. But again, the attack on Christianity is constant, it's nonstop, and we're not going to let them use it against us as a weapon. But again, I want to say the controlled opposition is they attack Christianity, and then the Christians dig down, right? And then they come out with some, I don't know, some warped Christian, 501c3 thing where it's like, well, I don't have to be involved in politics. Right? I mean, the pendulum's just pop, 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 and you just want to reach in there and grab it and say, we're not going to keep doing this, right? That's what the MAGA movement is doing. There is a pendulum in this country, in American politics and in global politics, that continues to just swing back and forth, consistent metronome, and the MAGA movement's just sticking our hand in there, grabbing that pendulum and stopping it and saying, we're not going to keep playing this game. You Christians better vote. You some 30 million Christians that aren't voting, I don't know what you're doing, honestly. I don't know why you're fooling yourself into thinking that Jesus wasn't involved in the world. He came, he performed miracles. So obviously our actions in the world matter, or else Jesus wouldn't have wasted his time doing it. And there's a prescription from the gospel that tells you how to live. And part of how to live is to tell the truth. So if you're in a Republican BPOU, or you live in a town and there's politics going on in the town, and you see that there are lies and deceit and wickedness afoot, it's incumbent upon you, it's your duty as a Christian to go and preach the gospel, to bear witness. These things are written right there. So, you want to piecemeal, you want to a la carte the Christianity and the gospel and the Bible for your own convenience, fine. But convenience will be the death of freedom. So for those who can't see, what we have here is one of these time-lapse progressive charts from the 1930s all the way to 2024 that gives the top 10 things that people spend their time doing. And at the top, in the early 1900s or 1930s, you had friends, family, you had school, you had church, you had neighbors, restaurants. And at the very bottom, you had being online. And in the 80s, you start to see it go from 0% on the bar graph and increase very dramatically and start to supplant everything else. By the end of this graph here, it's now 2020, and people spend, now it's 2024, people spend 60% of their time online.
Within 5 years, it jumped all the way from the bottom to the top, pretty much. That's crazy.
Since the 2010s, online the time people spend online went from the bottom of this chart of 10. What are the other things on the chart, Tanner?
We got friends, coworkers, bar and restaurants, family, school, church, neighbors, college. That's in order, top to bottom in 2024.
Top to bottom. So, you know, essentially, and I keep saying every single episode, the next hurdle is technology. And I don't think there's a better example, right? I mean, we could talk about oppression. We can talk about, injustice. We could talk about corruption. We could talk about tyranny and war and all these other things. But honestly and truly, when I said at the end of I just said convenience will be the death of freedom. And here we see a chart where progressively human beings are falling into giving their life, the time in their life over to something that's radically convenient by design, and that's being online. Whatever you're online for, whether it's shopping or ordering food or you're just browsing. And don't get me wrong, you can learn online too. So, there is some of it where online has supplanted school and college because you can learn online. There's a lot of information online. We can't discredit that, but a lot of us being online is just randomly scrolling and browsing bullshit. And so, whether you want to admit it or not, slowly but surely we're becoming a slave to technology.
Yeah.
And willingly, right? Voluntarily giving up our time and our sort of our life energy over to this Goliath.
I think like the pinnacle of it is whenever I see those commercials for Grammarly and they're starting to bring in AI, and it's like, yeah, fuck human creativity. Just let AI write your messages now. We're getting to a point where the internet is such a beautiful medium because you can learn on it and we can communicate with people that are overseas, but we have put so much trust into it that it is destroying us. Yeah. It's not good or evil, but what we are doing with it right now sure is not going to get us good results.
Yeah, no, and we all can see it. I mean, if you are able to watch, I would watch this graph. It's just, it wasn't that staggering to see in 90 years. We went from, and it really wasn't even 90 years because the first half of this time lapse until about the 1980s, there was no online. I mean, we all remember a time when there was no internet. I mean, even in the early 90s when I was coming up as a kid, there was no readily accessible internet. And if there was, people didn't have people didn't have easy access to computers even. I still remember when the first colored Macs started making their way into all of the public schools, and every teacher had one of those colored Macs, right? And you come into a teacher's classroom and you'd be like, their classroom, by the color of the Mac they chose. And, they had the red ones and the blue ones and orange and green and whatever. And, I still remember that as a kid. And so it was right around that time where computers were even readily accessible. And then you had, some schools that had, computer rooms, what they call them.
Media labs.
Media labs. You had some media labs pop up in the public schools and that after school programs. Barely anybody had a computer in their house. If they did, it didn't have the internet. Maybe it did, but you didn't really even think to browse it because there was nothing on it.
Yeah.
Because there weren't a bunch of websites on it yet, right? I mean, it wasn't built out. It's like any other real estate. There was no Facebook on, stuff didn't exist. So, like my grandmother had a computer at her apartment, and she grew up, she was living in an apartment, and, she played Mahjong on her computer, right? And she played solitaire or hearts and stuff on the computer. I remember going on the computer and playing games on it, right? Like, there was
that pinball machine game that was always on all Windows.
Yes, pinball is always on there. What about the remember Minesweeper?
Yeah, Minesweeper.
Minesweeper was a classic game in the 90s, and so that's what computers were. And then around 2005, 2006, when social media hit, it drew the entire world to the internet. I mean, there was the .com boom, and there was a lot of stuff popping on the internet then, but social media really drove people to the internet in a way that is is illustrated by this graph. You know, even in the last 8 years, and even since the mid 2010s, when social media really started to get rolling, and that's reflected through all of the subscription or membership numbers that have continued to increase on Facebook and X and wherever else. More and more people are online than ever before on those platforms. So we're headed in a direction where technology is just taking over. And, you know, can the cat be put back in the bag? Probably not. Do we need to get wise about where we're headed? We sure as hell better, because that graph right there, that bar graph, is horrifying.
I just wonder what is it gonna look like in 15 years? Because it was literally, for the people that can't see,
60%.
It was like 7 years, and online jumped to the top of the list.
60% of your time, 60% of our time we're spending online. And now you could argue, you could say, hey, well, you know, an hour and a half is here spent on your podcast. So
Yeah.
it's an hour and a half is, you know, what 120, you know, 5% of the day.
Yeah, and I mean, for me working this, I
Yeah.
would say about a quarter of the day I'm just sitting online.
It's online, right? So
Yeah.
I mean, you know, there is some wiggle room in there, but on the total, on the whole, that's a lot of time. And if we get to upper 90s and 100%, if we get to upper 80s and 90s, let's say, of our time spent online, I'm starting to think you're going to see some physiological changes in the human species over a couple generations, right?
We're gonna start looking like aliens.
You're gonna start looking weird, guys. I got to put that out there. I'm starting to wonder and be scared, if we're spending 80% of our time in front of a computer screen, there might be some unintended consequences. Let's play the next clip.
You know, is there something to worry about with medicines? That is, might some of them have side effects? Do we need safety testing? I mean, we're taking things that are, you know, genetically modified organisms, and we're injecting them in little kids' arms. We just shoot them right into the vein.
Yeah, well, that is what they're doing. I don't even want to make a comment on it. I'll just let Bill Gates speak for himself on that one. Let's roll the next clip. I think we got Robert Malone here, don't we? Yep, there we go. Robert Malone, inventor of the mRNA vaccine technology, with a stark warning for parents. Here we go.
Parents, before you inject your child a decision that is irreversible, I wanted to let you know the scientific facts about this genetic vaccine, which is based on the mRNA vaccine technology I created. There are 3 key issues that parents need to understand. The first is that a viral gene will be injected into your children's cells. This gene forces your child's body to make toxic spike proteins. These proteins can cause permanent damage in children's critical organs, including their brain and nervous system, their heart and blood vessels, including blood clots, their reproductive system, and this vaccine can trigger fundamental changes to their immune system. The most alarming part about this is that these damages, once they occur, are irreparable. You can't fix lesions within their brains. You can't repair heart tissue scarring. You can't repair a genetically reset immune system. And this vaccine can cause reproductive damage that could affect future generations of your family. The second thing that you need to know about this is the fact that this novel technology has not been adequately tested. We typically need at least 5 years of testing and research before we can really understand the risks of new medicines or vaccines. Harms and risks from new medicines often become revealed many years later. So ask yourself, if you want your own child to be part of the most radical medical experiment in human history. One final point. The reason they're giving you to vaccinate your child is a lie. Your children represent no danger to their parents or grandparents. It's actually the opposite. Their immunity after getting COVID is critical to save your family, if not the world, from this disease. In summary, there is no benefit.
Well, Robert Malone been a huge voice out there in the wilderness since the early inception of this COVID pandemic that is by many standards over now. You could say at least the brunt force of it is over, but it's always going to be there with us. There's always a new strain of COVID or something going on here, in the news, or now when a new flu breaks out, it seems like it's a little more scary than ever. You heard about that new flu that's going around? This is, so everybody's awareness is heightened about viruses and things like that. But Robert Malone, I can remember on the earliest days of War Room Pandemic, criticizing what action was being taken, and certainly when the vaccine started to be discussed, he was very cautious, and critical of the process in which the vaccine was being rolled out. And it's people like Robert Malone that are going to go down in history for speaking the uncomfortable truth in very inopportune moments. And hey, here's the scary part, and this is the part that people don't really want to have to wrap their minds around, is whether you took the vaccine or whether it was the virus itself, the spike protein was a genetically enhanced, virus. I mean, the material in COVID itself was genetically modified by many measures. So a lot of us out there who had COVID naturally are going to have some of these problems in the near future as well. What Malone is saying is, let's not compound the problem by injecting ourselves with a vaccine that hasn't been thoroughly tested and by most measures puts the very thing in your body that can, damage your internal organs. And so he's a brave guy to say it. But we had Dr. Pierre Corey on a couple of weeks back who said the same thing. And him and Dr. Malone know each other. And, it's just this stuff is not new for most in this audience, but we continue to show it to hope that slowly but surely the people who were brainwashed and kind of tricked and convinced into this will continue to wake up and see what's really going on here. So Robert Malone.
I just have a question.
Yeah.
I want to know your thought on this. Do you think that with the plan with COVID, since, the spike protein was genetically modified, do you think it was unintentionally released? Do you think, like, if they had a plan to release it, do you think it was released at the right time, or do you think it accidentally escaped and then they just had to go forth with their plan?
That's a very good question. Hard to say.
Yeah, I don't know. I just thought of it. I was just like thinking about, oh man, that'd be
It's
crazy.
hard to say. I mean, I'm not here to shill for the CCP, but it's just there's so much. I mean, you talk about information warfare is a dirty game.
Yeah.
Biological warfare is the ultimate dirty game. I mean, I don't even know where to begin and who benefits. Cui bono. You just ask who benefits, right? And you can start to deduce back from there. The CCP definitely benefited, right? But there's probably a certain echelon of the American deep state or the American government that benefited as well, who's very proto-communist Chinese party. And it definitely restricted the movement of everyone in a sense. It put more people online. It made more people dependent on the government. People lost their homes, people lost their jobs. And so there's naturally a loss of sovereignty in that people aren't really the masters of their own little world anymore. After the pandemic, a lot of people are more dependent on expertise, institutional expertise. So a lot of people benefited from it in terms of the agenda, what we call the globalist establishment agenda. Did they release it on purpose at that time? We'd have to talk about who and what their intention was at that time. It's very possible that it was accidental. Let's say that.
Yeah.
We could even say I would grant it's very likely that it was accidental. So now, but you got to realize too, like an agency like the CIA talks about or is on the record saying, we're very good at killing people, but we're very good at creating the circumstances for people to be killed. That's a very important distinction to make and to understand that maybe it's not that they intentionally released the virus on that day, but they created the circumstance for the virus to accidentally be released because of the facility it was in, the standards that are, you know, held up at that facility, things that it would be easy for a very good intelligence agency to know and to not do anything about and to kind of let take place. And then to have an entire sort of plan waiting to roll out if the outbreak happens. So to your point, did it release on accident and then they just follow through with their plan? That's very possible. And it's very possible they have other plans where the plans have already been thought through, but they have to allow things, they have to create the circumstances and allow things to happen naturally as to be able to, you know, plausibly deny any wrongdoing, which you saw Dr. Fauci do. The bad part is these people are so incompetent and even in their secrecy and in their conspiracy that they left all the smoking guns right out there for people to see, which is scary, right? Because it's like the people who you actually kind of want to believe that there are people who are so smart and meticulous they could do something like this, but they have their hands on the wheel. Right? The scariest thing is that somebody's doing whatever the fuck they want with their eyes closed and their hands off the wheel and you're driving 90 miles an hour, right? That's more scary. You know, a guy who's driving 90 miles an hour, but he's got his hands on the wheels, you're like, okay, I don't like that you're going this fast, but I see your hands on the wheel. We might be in a hands off the wheel situation, right? It's just like, or they're just spitting in your face again and saying, we'll do what we want. You people are beneath us. You're not human, or we're above you. And our scientific managerial elite do kind of act like they believe they're just above us, the rest of us. And so there may be some of that. But the reality is the paper trail for gain-of-function research that we're now uncovering and the connection between America's scientific community or the international scientific community and this lab in Wuhan are starting to come to the surface. And it would appear that everybody knew how dangerous this type of research is. And the way they hid it was to make it normal. Not just there in Wuhan, but all across the world. This type of research is taking place. So they were able to sort of hide their culpability in the broader sea of scientific normalcy. It's like, well, gain-of-function research is happening all over the place. It's been happening. We've been doing it.
Yeah.
So that kind of gives them a layer of deniability. It's like, well, yeah, at the end of the day, sure, this virus had gain-of-function research and funding, and it broke out, and it killed millions of people, and it changed the course of human history and our society and how we live. But at the end of the day, we've been doing this for a long time, so it's not like we did anything out of the ordinary. So there's a lot going on there, but people tend to think that conspiracy like happens the way it does in the movies or TV shows, and like Bannon always says, you know, there are no conspiracies, but there are no coincidences. It's not a conspiracy. This is how the system works. Gain of function is a great example where, you know, they're doing gain of function research still. I mean, you know, a pandemic happened. They didn't stop the gain of function research. In fact, they probably used the pandemic as a justification to continue the research, right? So, you know, that's how the conspiracy, and that's how conspiracy actually works. So. It's the last video.
One more clip, yeah.
All right, good. We got a fun one here at the end, or at least fun for me. Maybe not for the mermaid. Oh, there it is. Let's run that one back for the people who might have missed it. There's a quick clip there. We got it. For those of you who aren't watching, we have a 22-year-old mermaid, 22-year-old Russian mermaid in a prehistoric exhibit there in China with a fish that is about the same size as her. I would say if they're, you know, I don't know if the fish is genetically modified or not. I don't know. But there's a pretty big fish, probably about as big as her body at least. And the fish tried to take a chunk out of her head. You know, he bit her right in the head, had her whole head in his mouth. Let's play the clip one more time. I mean, he got his whole head in her. He got her whole head in his mouth. That's a big fish.
Also, if you look really close, I'm not sure.
Is it a shark?
Are there teeth?
I don't. Well,
I feel like I see teeth. Like you can see the shark's teeth almost.
Well, there was a clip. Well, it's not a shark. If it's a shark, they defanged it because there is the next slide over. If you find this clip online, the next slide over showed the picture of her after it, And she didn't have like a gash or anything.
That's not a shark?
No, I don't think that's a shark. I think that's a fish.
That's a massive fish if that's not
No
a shark.
doubt.
That's crazy.
No doubt. Yeah, no, I think that's a fish. But, I mean, it's so big. I would call it a shark.
It is a shark.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm just a regular Joe. I mean, I'm not into, big fish, big game hunting. But if I was in a saltwater lake or a freshwater lake and I saw a fish that big, I'd say that's a fucking shark. You know what I mean? I'm just a regular old guy. You know what I mean? But the moral of the story is everybody wants to be a mermaid until a human-sized fish takes a bite out of your face, right? And I don't know what relevance that has to the rest of the podcast. Usually I tie it in, but I don't really have any good deep philosophical tie-in. I thought it was just funny because every little girl wants to be a mermaid, and it seems fun to be a mermaid and swim in a life-size, aquarium with a 70-pound fish until he tries to take a bite out of your head. And you see how panicked she was. She just swims straight to the top. She wasn't hurt, though. And the pictures of her, she barely had a bruise on the right side of her face, so she didn't have a piece of chunk taken out. But, stuff like this just boggles my mind. It's like, how much would they have to pay me to get in an aquarium with a fake mermaid fin and swim around with a fish that could fit my whole head in its mouth? I mean, to me, it's just like only in China. But it's not only in China. I mean,
It's the state of our world. We don't understand the true dangers that we face.
Yes, there you go. The deep philosophical tie-in from the great young Tanner here at the end. We do not understand the dangers we face sometimes. This young woman, 22 years old, beautiful young woman, her whole life ahead of her, just trying to make a buck, probably was a swimmer, probably, maybe what were they, synchronized, swimming or something.
Yeah,
swim team. And she thought, hey, great opportunity, probably came across it on Facebook. There's probably an ad, a spam that was sent to her inbox, and she just looked into it and, hey, we're a Chinese aquatic prehistoric museum, and we're looking for young swimmers that would love to be in our aquarium as mermaids. Hey, I always wanted to be a mermaid. I get paid to swim around as a mermaid, and whomp, fucking fish just tries to take your head off on day one. This is probably the first week on the job. No workman's comp there in China, totalitarian China. Can't even call it workman's comp because she's a woman. You see where we're going? You don't understand the dangers you face out there. This has been another episode of Please Call Me Crazy, brought to you by Free People Radio, powered by our favorite sponsor, TireGet.com. That's TireGet.com. You have to buy tires from somebody. Might as well buy them from us. Go to TireGet.com. Put in promo code FPR. You get 3% off your final purchase. We're giving you 3% off the tires already. You're already getting a great deal. I think we got the tires down to a cost that rivals all of the major competitors that you can find online. So plus another 3%, you're getting a real good deal on your tires. And hey, you only got to buy tires maybe once a year. So maybe it's not today, but when you do go to buy your tires, we have I think we have the entire website set up so that the installers that are in your local area will have the tires shipped to them, and you can bring your car to that local installer and have your tires put on for you. Easy, nice and easy process. So go to TireGet.com, go to FreePeopleRadio.com, get your merchandise. You got coffee mugs, we got the T-shirts, the hoodies, the long sleeve seat T-shirts. We got spring coming around, so we got a bunch of great T-shirts, Godspeed T-shirts. Right now, I'm working with getting connected with the Bigley people, and we may have a partnership coming up with them for merchandise, and then that means we'll be getting a lot more merchandise and T-shirts, apparel designs up on the store, and be able to work with them as well. So stay tuned to that. But episode 250, congratulations to Tanner, who's been working with us for a while, and the great Professor Penn, who's a partner of mine, Free People Radio. Congratulations to everybody else who's contributed to the podcast, all of the great people in the audience. We appreciate your viewership and listenership today and in the future. Episode 250, Please Call Me Crazy. Much more to come. Stay tuned for the Sunday call-in show. Like I said, we're going to want your participation. We want people to call in. We want it to be fun. Doesn't have to be about politics. You'll be able to call in and ask me whatever you want. Everybody in the live chat, thank you again for your participation, your dedication. I do see you regulars in the live chat. I don't want you to think I don't see you. So hopefully the call-in show will be some reciprocity for the faithful live chat folks who have been with us since the very beginning or the early days. And that's it for me, guys. We'll see you on Friday. Can't tell you who the guest is going to be yet, so it's a surprise. We'll just see you on Friday evening for another episode of Please Call Me Crazy. Godspeed. God bless America. The fight continues and the people are coming. Everything's up on the bar. We're all in. We get to decide. Do you want to live on your knees or do you want to die on your feet fighting? That's the decision you get to make now.